Hi, this is Fady from Harvey Productions, and welcome to another video. I know a lot of you guys have heard me talk a lot about this unit, which is my monitor controller, my Grace M908. I can talk a lot about this unit. There's so many features and specs to that unit. It's absolutely phenomenal. But in today's video, I want to specifically address routing in this unit. So we'll be looking at the back of the unit and what is all the connectivity ins and outs, and also how to use the software to route that unit and set it up in your studio. And it just happened to be that in my studio, I'm using a lot of the routing on that unit, and I'm using a lot of IOs in it. And because of the flexibility of this unit, it makes it a game changer in the studio. I understand the price is not a cheap unit, but as we go through some of the specs and the features and the flexibility of the routing, I'll be making more videos discussing in more in-depth details about all the other features that this unit carry. But in today's video, let's dig into routing. So when you get the unit, it comes in two pieces. You got the remote, which is this unit, and then you have a 2-unit rack that is in my studio down underneath here that I have hooked up. So I'm gonna pull up a picture here. Let's take a look at it and let's see what the rack unit looks like first, because I wanna understand the IOs before we talk into and before we discuss the routing and how do you route audio through that unit. Okay, so this is the basic back of that unit, what it looks like when you purchase it. And then you can see there's additional card slots that you can install in this unit. So mine came like this, but I had the Dante card installed right here in that option IO. So mine looks something like this one was that option card right here. Now, the rest of the stuff, really quick, you have talk back in, talk back out, which unit has 2 talkback mics, one on the monitor controller and then the little remote, and then one on the actual unit. And then here's your speaker outs. So you got like 3, basically 8, 8, and a 9 to 16 for outputs. So you can set them for cues and speakers and all that kind of stuff. These 16s are more for speakers, and this is for cue, and then they share converters in one of them. And then you got a dedicated stereo speaker output if you're only using one set of speakers, so you don't have to use DB25. Word clock in and out. The unit hooks up via USB, so it works like an audio interface. 2 optical ins, ADATs, SPDIF, and then AES in. That host USB thing, it has to do with firmware upgrades and stuff like that. This cable connects to the remote, and then you got 3 sets of AES DB25 ins and outs, power supply, talk, like a pedal. You can assign a pedal and then assign what features it does, and an Ethernet cable. Now, one of the things that the M908 offers, which I love, is that Ethernet cable allows you, once you hook it up to your network, then you can access the unit and all the features in the routing. Instead of trying to doing it on the remote here with that little screen, you actually access it on your browser. So I have it right here. I'm logged in. You can see there's an IP address at the top. And when I log in, this is what I see. I can actually control anything off that unit up here on the screen. I can turn stuff on, off. You guys can see here's my speaker selection. All my speakers, my inputs, my outputs, everything, I can control it from here. So we'll be going through this view, and then we'll be addressing here how to route audio in and out in this view. So I'm going to start with a basic stereo speaker setup, and then you obviously can take that simple stereo 2.0, and then the same principle will apply to multiple sets of speakers, or the same principle will apply if you have like a surround setup or a Dolby Atmos setup. So first thing we'll go to that edit feature at the top right, which is setup, and then we're going to click on this, and this is kind of the view of what we will see. And if I go to the matrix at the bottom right here, it shows me like a full matrix of connectivity of what is connected where. Here's my inputs, here's my speakers, here's my cue, and here's my meters, and where's everything is outputted. This is like a quick shortcut where you get to assign ins and outs, and it looks like it's just a basic matrix IO. that is so simple, but also it is so powerful because of the flexibility of what that unit allows to. I can grab inputs. So let's go to input. Let's take it one at a time. I'm going to select the first input, and I labeled it monitor. It's basically, it's what's coming from my DAW main outputs, and I called it monitor. And then when I select my input, now I'm seeing my speaker setup. And in this setup, I have 2 speakers only, left and right. Now, if I have more, I can just add. So you see that source disabled, that center speaker. I can add as many. If I want to add a sub in here, or side or rear speakers, you can just change the source to it. So I'm starting with left speaker. So I'm basically telling the unit that my left speaker, the source of the audio coming to that left speaker input, is SPDIF, because I have a SPDIF cable running from my Galaxy to my M908. And then it's SPDIF channel 1. And then my right speaker is SPDIF channel 2. Now let's say I also have an ADAT cable connected between both units. So it's really simple. I'm going to select left speaker, go here, say my source is ADAT 1 channel, and you see there's 8 because I'm running 48 sample rate right now, and ADAT channel 1. So it's just simple, and you can see here all the sources. Is my source coming any of my AES? There's 4 sets of them. And then ADAT 1 and 2 is the source coming from the USB, from the computer playback engine, source coming from SPDIF, source coming from Dante, because I have Dante card installed. You can see here, I don't have analog input because I don't have the analog card installed on my unit. So I am going to choose SPDIF channel 1, this SPDIF channel 2. This is the first source. All right, I'm going to a second source, and you guys can see I have completely different. So I have like multiple playback outputs coming from my audio interface from my DAW, and it is for me to reference different mixes, and then I can just switch them really easy from my controller over here. And you can see I have a Dante cable running, like an Ethernet cable connected, so my unit is receiving Dante from my Galaxy, because my Galaxy has Dante in it, the antelope. And I'm just saying my mix B is receiving, so the left side is receiving Dante channel 3, my mix B right channel receiving Dante channel 4, mix C is Dante 5 and 6, mix D is Dante 7 and 8. Then I have, so you can have up to 16 inputs in here, which is really in depth. It's incredible how many inputs you can have. 16 different input sources. Some of these input sources could be stereo. Some of these input sources could be surround, some could be full Dolby Atmos. It could be anything you want, and each one of these input, you will adjust how many channels are in that input. You can also, on an input, now I could talk about this a lot because there's so many details. On that input, I'm labeling my input. I can tell it, if I switch source to that input, there's a clock override. So then it changes the playback engine of that to a different clock. Or if it's disabled, so it's following my master clock. A practical example here, I have my USB, and my USB is, when I select as an input, my input source is basically my USB, and then the unit becomes its own audio interface. And you guys can see my clock override is at 192, which means when I select this, that unit switches to 192, and then any track that I play from iTunes or YouTube or whatever, and I select that input source, then my unit becomes playing back at 192 because I want to listen at the highest sample rate, which is really cool that you'll be able to do that. Now you got, again, 16 inputs in here. You can assign them however you want. And then on each one of these inputs, you can offset the level, just the master gain for that, or you can sync delays on these inputs. So that's the first part of routing. Okay, so basic monitor controller 101 is you're getting signals coming in, and then multiple feeds coming in, you're selecting which one, and then that signal you're taking it and sending it out. So that's going to be my CR or speakers. So I have here 3 sets, first and third are duplicate. I have 2 sets of speakers, so I'm using CR2 and CR3 as my outputs. And you guys can see, like my Micromain 27, my Barefoot is CR3. You can see I have labeled it. I also level offset it by negative 0.35 dB because I applied some room correction and I wanted to not have it distort. And I'm just going to go in here on the routing and I'm going to tell it to output this to CR1 on the back of the unit, which is the output. So right here, CR1, and output it to channel 1 because that goes to the left, and CR1 channel 2 goes to the right of my barefoots. And then you got some extra features, which we'll talk about these in a different video, but this I'm talking specifically about routing in here, and this is how I'm routing this. Now I'm going to go to the Atlas i8 speaker, my second set of speakers. I'm still coming out of the CR1, but I'm going channel 3 and channel 4 because it's a DB25 and it carries 8 channels. And it's so easy, just like this, I can set up and choose where it goes. Let's say this one, I want to send it to a Q mix, or I want to send it to an AES, or I want to send it to a Dante. So I can, like, really cool, I can take an AES output out of my Grace. I can send it to the AES input on my speakers. And then I can choose now, when I select this speaker, the MM27 on the first one, I can call it here MM27 AES, so I know which one it is. Then AES 27 AES, which in this case, I am sending to the speaker a digital signal and using the converters of the speaker. But if I go to this MM27, I am sending analog and I'm converting on the Grace itself. So this is how I'm sending to different speakers and assigning the outputs on these different speakers. Same applies to Q. So on the Q, I got 4 Qs, and then here's the level of each Q. So you can see Q, I can adjust levels for each Q separate. But then I'm going to go to Q1, and I'm going to say the source, where's the input coming for that Q, and I could choose any of my sources. I can, for example, use Dante, and then I say the left channel is coming from Dante 9 and right channel coming from Dante 10. And I can send a Q from my DAW to Dante channel 9 and 10, and it goes right here, and then it outputs to anything. Headphone pre's, I mean, it can be anything. It's like, it's so much connectivity, and you can assign it to whatever you want. Right, you can say left connector, left channel, and right channel. And then here is monitor to Q, if it's able to, and like if I'm sending my monitor mix to a Q, do you send left and right, or do you down mix them? You can assign those however you want to. Next part of routing, I want it to send a specific audio signal to my TC Electronic for metering, which a lot of us have a metering unit in the studio, and I want to send to it a signal at full level before it hits my monitor, so that way when I adjust volumes, it does not affect the meter. So here you go, my meter routing. I say follow monitor pre, so it's pre my volume on the monitor, and I'm telling it that my left channel, I'm sending it to AES1, and my right channel, sending it to AES32. And then I'm sending that AES input or output into the input of my TC Electronic, and that's how I am routing it. Now, going back to the matrix, because that's kind of become, and you can see here, now this would make sense. Here's my first, I'm talking about inputs. Here's my first input, which is monitor, and I can see that it's receiving audio from SPDIF 1 and 2. And then you can see, I can easily switch it. So here you go, that's how I swap to the inputs. And then you can see that my second is receiving audio from ADAT 3 and 4. Like if I want this to receive audio from ADAT 5 and 6 right away. And then here's, if I have all these extra speakers set up, then I can just adjust all my inputs however I want it to be. And that's coming from Dante. Now here's my speakers. My MM27 is sending to CR1, 1 and 2. My Atlas IA8 is sending to CR1, 3 and 4. This one that we just did together is sending, well, we didn't save it. So this one, it would have been if we wanted to send it AES to the speaker. So I would go here to AES and I'll send it because I did not save it. So 1 and 2. So here is like I'm sending an AES signal going to my speakers. I'm going to just return it back to where it was. Here is my cues. Here's the input of my cues at the top, and here's the output of my cues at the bottom. This is like what we did where we selected that Q1 is receiving signal from Dante 9 and 10, and then it's outputting at the bottom side. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's all 4 cues, and here's the output of each cue and where is that going. So for example, I would, if I have a headphone pre, I can say, okay, send this to output CR 5 and 6, or 7 and 8, or something like that. Or if I want to send a digital audio out, which is, it's like I'm receiving signal, and I can receive analog signal, convert it to digital, and send it out if I have the analog inputs. Or I'm receiving, in this case, I'm receiving multiple digital signals. So I'm receiving an ADAT signal. I'm also receiving SPDIF signal, and I'm also receiving a Dante signal. I'm also receiving the playback signal, which is coming from my USB, which is the computer engine. And then I can send these outputs to anywhere I want. Okay, the next set of I/O to discuss here is my headphone output. So under headphone mix, which is under monitor controller, headphone, you guys can see this is where my headphone settings are. And because the unit has 2 headphone outputs, one on the actual remote and one on the rack, you can use the built-in headphone pre's of the unit. And then here again, here's like the gain on the headphone pre, here's the balance, here's the limit level, and then a power up level when you turn the unit on. What does it turn on? And then where's the source? Is this coming from a down mix, or is this coming from my main left and right mix or cue? And the idea of down mix, because this unit supports Dolby Atmos and surround setup and stuff like that, and you're sending that to a headphone, if your source input is 16 channels of audio and you want to route that to a headphone, you actually get to select how that is being routed to a headphone. Does it get routed just as a left and right? So you only grab left and right from that setup, or you down mix, and at the bottom here, phone and down mix, you can choose the mode of how it's being down mixed. You can see here 7.1, 5.1, left, right. There's like multiple different ways to how to down mix into your headphone. I think in a really brief way, this kind of explained the simple way to set up I/Os on that unit. The unit feels complex because of all the flexibility and the routing, but because of that interface that Grace did, which is all on a browser using an IP address, it's so much easier to control all the ins and all the outs, assign anything to anything, any outputs to any input, any inputs to any outputs, without having to work on a little screen and trying to assign and stuff like that. You can also create, you can save what you have created, and you can create multiple workflows and multiple profiles. And if you pull up a specific profile, it will preserve all of its I/Os and all of its settings. And then if you can save a different workflow, different profile, have completely different I/Os and ins and outs and stuff like that, which would be, for example, if you have a stereo setup in your studio and you also have a Dolby Atmos setup, and you want to have a profile when you're working only in stereo and a profile only when you're working in Dolby Atmos, and each has different I/Os. Also, if we go back actually here, you guys can see this information that you see here on this page is actually the same information that you see on that little screen here, which is, I like the idea that whatever input or output I select, I can see the names of these input and outputs on my screen. Like I can see that I selected number 1, but I can label it however I want to label it, so I remember which one it is. Or I remember if I selected CR3, which I can't remember which speaker was it, I remember now, it's the MM27. It's really simple, but it's because of that LCD screen, it's big enough. It shows all the input, outputs. It's showing me where's my clock source, what is my sample rate for my clock. It's showing me my SPL signal, the output signal for the headphones, the output signal for the speakers, the level of those, which it makes it much easier for me to remember what is input and what is output. Anyways, I hope this was helpful, and it was a simple breakdown of the I/Os of the Grace M908. I'll be making more videos about the M908, all the other features, and how I'm using it in my studio and how I'm routing it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below and I will try to answer them. I will see you guys at the next video.